This is not going to be an exhaustive analysis of any of them, but it's more really of just a basic intro that will hopefully bring the importance of these nutrients to your attention, if it hasn't been already. Now, the first four essential sugars are actually fairly simple sugars with a fairly basic chemical structure, and because of that, they're obviously really sweet. Now, they are called glucose, galactose, fucose, and xylose. Now, glucose and galactose are really not that hard to come by at all. Glucose is, it's in fruits, vegetables, it's basically in all forms of carbohydrates. Galactose is found again in fruits and vegetables. You also find it in some mushrooms, but it's most concentrated in raw dairy foods. Now, simple sugars like these are very efficient sources of immediately available blood sugar, but this is also why they need to be consumed quite mindfully and done so in moderation, with also attention paid to hormones, in particular our sensitivity to insulin, because overconsumption of really any simple sugars, it can lead to quite a large number of very common health problems, and it also increases our resistance to insulin. And while we're on this subject, I'd just like to point out that it's really important to fast from these kind of simple sugars like glucose and galactose in instances of some cancers, or also instances of candida and other chronic infections like this, because these simple sugars do directly feed the invading organisms. So despite what some health advocates and health educators are saying at the moment, simple sugars do not heal these conditions. Simple sugars really need to be moderated or even completely removed for a period of time while healing is taking place. Now, on the other side of that coin, too long without these simple sugars does also present its own series of problems, most often neurological problems. So developing this kind of intuitive, intelligent, and balanced strategy based on your individual circumstances, it really is the best approach, I think. Anyway, now that I've really slagged these sugars off, I'll tell you how awesome they are as well. Now, they do have the capacity in moderate consumption to really enhance both short and long-term memory. They can really increase the absorption of the right kind of calcium. They also enhance the ability of our cells to communicate with each other. And on top of that, galactose also has the ability to reduce inflammation in the body, and it also increases the speed at which injuries heal and the speed at which we can recover from quite intensive exercise. Now, fucose is the third essential sugar. It's definitely a lot harder to come across than glucose and galactose, and it does possess a lot of the properties that I just mentioned, but it also has a specific affinity for tonifying the lungs and healing lung-related illnesses. Now, it's also very hypoallergenic and really contains excellent antiviral properties. Now, deficiencies in fucose are closely correlated with a much higher susceptibility to some cancers, also to diabetes, herpes, and also cystic fibrosis. Now, fucose intake can act as both a very effective treatment protocol for these conditions, but it also acts as a very powerful preventative as well. Now, fucose is present in some seeds and mushroom varieties, but it's really most concentrated in seaweeds, in particular kelp and wakame as well. Now, the fourth fairly simple sugar is xylose. Xylose is a 5-chain sugar, making it a bit more complex than the previous three, and although it still has a sweet taste, it really doesn't act in the same way at all. Now, xylose is in some fruits and vegetables, but these really are not the best quality or even quantity of xylose. The best source is actually from birch trees. Now, you can harvest birch sap in early spring, and there is even birch syrup, which is slowly making its way onto the international market, but I think because the birch syrup industry is so small and in its infancy, the product itself is still really quite pricey. So the best and most accessible source of xylose, I think, is definitely xylitol. Xylitol is a derivative of xylose, and it's basically just birch sugar. And you can use it in much the same way as you would use any kind of sugar, but the cool thing is it really doesn't contain any of the negative side effects that you would associate with the simple sugars. It doesn't feed into cancer. It doesn't feed into candida like glucose or galactose do. It doesn't negatively impact the delicate balance of insulin in the way that glucose and galactose both can. It's just important to remember that if you're buying xylitol products, make sure that it's birch-derived xylitol. Now, the next essential sugar is called mannose. Now, mannose is actually a medium-chain sugar that sits somewhere in the middle between the simple sugars and the complex polysaccharides. Now, it's a really excellent source for improving cellular communication again. And it's also a potent anti-tumor substance that also contains really potent antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, and antiparasitic properties. Now, like the polysaccharides, mannose has also been shown to contain a really high concentration of ormus elements, which, if you don't know what ormus elements are, they're kind of mineral-like substances that are in their very early stages of development, and they contain a kind of energetic property that's, to be honest, it's not at all fully understood how it works, but it does exhibit really powerful activities to the health and function of our minds, of our nervous systems. It really improves joint health and really enhances the immune system. Now, mannose is also really highly anti-inflammatory, and deficiencies in mannose can be quite easily recognized by things like early onset arthritic conditions, as well as certain illnesses like lupus, for example. Illnesses really that have an overstimulated immune system at their core. Now, one of the best sources of mannose is actually aloe vera. Aloe vera gel or aloe vera juice are really amazing sources of mannose. You can also find quite high concentrations of it in carob, and it's also in some seaweeds. I think it's quite high in kelp, and it's fairly common throughout the top medicinal mushrooms. Now, the last three essential sugars are all polysaccharides. They're all the complex, branched, long-chain sugars, and they're really like the big guns of these 8 essential sugars. The beneficial and tonic medicinal actions that they can impart to us are really epic. And it's really at this point that we start to notice the almost complete absence of these nutrients in the standard food that we have available to us. Now, the 3 essential polysaccharides are called N-acetylglucosamine, N-acetylgalactosamine, and N-acetylnuraminic acid. If you really don't understand what I'm saying here, I'm going to write this all down in the description box so you can have a written reference for it. But ultimately, they share a lot of similar attributes, but they also have their own kind of unique signatures as well. Now, they all have a really huge impact on joint health. They're all very, very profound at reducing inflammation in the joints and also repairing damaged cartilage, which is something I was told by a surgeon was actually not possible. But it is, and these sugars help that to happen. They're all very incredible immune modulators, which means that basically they support the immune system to go in whichever direction it needs to go in order to maintain balance. Now, they can either stimulate the immune response or they can depress it. Really just depends on what's most needed at the time. So polysaccharides, from that perspective, they actually contain a kind of intelligence, and they're really highly adaptogenic. Now, they generally all possess the ability to repair damaged mucosal tissue in the digestive tract, and in doing that, they really enhance the selective permeability of the intestinal membrane. Now, they're pretty much all amazing antivirals as well. Often they exhibit powerful effects in the treatment of HIV. It's actually N-acetylglucosamine that's really the more active one on this particular area. And the best place that you can find it is really in the enchanted realm of the medicinal mushrooms. Now, shiitake contains the richest source of this particular polysaccharide out of really any food or any herb that's ever been discovered. Now, it's also very prevalent in the insect kingdom. So those of you that are already experimenting with Polyrhachis ant extract or Chinese mountain ant, you should really be getting quite a potent dose of this one every time you consume that. Now, the next essential polysaccharide is N-acetylgalactosamine. Now, this is one of the other polysaccharides that has a specific impact on inhibiting the growth and spread of tumours. Also, in pretty much all cases of heart disease, you will find a deficiency of this polysaccharide. At least that's what the research is suggesting anyway. Now, it appears to improve the flow of blood through the heart, and it somehow declogs any plaque formations that may be accumulating there. It's not exactly the easiest one to come by. The two richest sources of it are marine phytoplankton and also red algae or red algae supplements or powders that you can get. They're very rich in N-acetylgalactosamine. Now, the last essential sugar is N-acetylnuraminic acid. Now, aside from the standard kind of antiviral, antibacterial, immune modulating actions, what makes this one unique is its supporting role in brain function and brain development, which really makes sense because it's very abundant in a healthy mother's breast milk. Now, it's not just for developing children, you know, it really provides excellent brain support for everybody, people of all ages. It also has a really strong action on nourishing the nervous system. You can find this in very high quality raw dairy products, but it is again in marine phytoplankton, and I think the richest source of this particular polysaccharide is the medicinal mushroom lion's mane. Now, all three of these polysaccharides also can act as a kind of long-term, slow-release, slow-burning cellular energy that can really help to keep blood sugar stable and really help to strike a balance between insulin and glucagon. Now, there are many more healing sugars, and in particular long-chain complex polysaccharides that really elevate our health on just about every level. Many of them are just as hard to come by as some of the ones that I've talked about in this video, but to some degree we do still possess some ability to manufacture them within the body, so technically speaking they're not essential, but in reality, you know, consuming them regularly, it really can have absolutely life-changing effects. Now, I'm going to leave it here now for this video because it's already getting a bit too long, but perhaps we can have a look at some of the other healing sugars and the beta-glucans and some of the other amazing medicinal mushrooms that contain them in a future video. I really just wanted to highlight these 8 sugars in particular because I think it's very important to remember that these essential sugars that we've just talked about have been designed into our nutritional consumption by nature. But they have nearly all been deliberately removed from the conventional food supply. So when we experience long-term deficiencies in these sugars, we do begin to suffer from immunological imbalances, neurological problems, we have mental health issues, we have problems with our joints, we have issues with both short and long-term memory. We can have a really decreased ability to heal properly from injury or recover from exercise. There's really just so many chronic health complaints that are now becoming just widely accepted as normal. And coincidentally, many of them have a not so surprising correlation with deficiencies in many of these not so easy to find sugar molecules that in reality should be much more widely available to us in our natural food supply. So that's it for now. I hope that was useful, and I'll see you soon.